I was 63 years old when I finally said the words out loud. This is Margaret. She's not just my roommate, she's the love of my life. For 42 years, we'd hidden behind polite smiles and careful pronouns, living as best friends while our hearts beat as one. But when my daughter announced her engagement and asked me to bring someone special to her wedding, I realized I couldn't lie anymore, not to her, not to myself, and certainly not to the woman who'd given me the best decades of my life. This is the story of how fear kept us silent and how love finally gave us our voice. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever hidden a part of yourself to protect someone you love? Share your thoughts below. The summer of 1983 smelled like fresh paint and possibility. I was 21, newly divorced, with a 3-year-old daughter, and desperately trying to make ends meet in a town that still whispered about broken homes. That's when Margaret walked into the elementary school where I'd just been hired as a teacher's aide. Was the art teacher with paint-stained fingers and a laugh that could light up the darkest classroom. We became friends instantly, bonding over terrible cafeteria coffee and shared frustrations about tight budgets and tighter-minded administrators. She never asked about my failed marriage, and I never questioned why someone so vibrant was always alone. Our friendship deepened over autumn leaves and winter snow. Margaret would come over on Friday nights, bringing Chinese takeout and helping me put my daughter to bed. She'd read stories in different voices, making Emma giggle until she hiccuped. Those evenings felt like coming home to something I'd never known I was missing. It was a February evening, bitter cold, with ice coating the windows, when everything changed. Emma had fallen asleep early, and Margaret and I sat on my threadbare couch, sharing a bottle of wine I couldn't afford but had bought anyway. She was telling me about her family, conservative, religious, unforgiving. When her voice cracked, "They stopped speaking to me when I was 19, she said quietly. When I told them I could never marry a man." My heart stopped. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier with unspoken truths. I reached for her hand without thinking, and when our fingers intertwined, something inside me that had been locked away since adolescence finally broke free. "I understand," I whispered, and in that moment, I did. Every disappointing wedding night with my ex, every feeling I'd pushed down and labeled as wrong, every time I'd caught myself staring too long at a woman and felt ashamed, it all made sense. We didn't kiss that night, we just held hands until dawn, two women realizing they'd finally found someone who understood. But we both knew, without saying it, that our lives had just changed forever. The real relationship began slowly, carefully. We were terrified of losing our jobs, of losing Emma, of confirming every cruel stereotype. In 1983, being gay could cost you everything. So we became experts at hiding in plain sight. Best friends, roommates, nothing more. We crafted our story so carefully that eventually, even we almost believed it. Margaret moved into my small rental house 6 months later. We told everyone it made financial sense to single women, splitting expenses, helping each other out. The town nodded approvingly at our practical arrangement. No one questioned why we needed only one bedroom, why the second room became Margaret's art studio instead. We built our life in whispers and stolen moments. During the day, we were colleagues, careful to maintain appropriate distance. At school events, we'd arrive separately, mingle with different groups, leave at different times. But at night, in the sanctuary of our home with the curtains drawn, we were simply used to women, deeply, impossibly in love. Emma was our greatest joy and our greatest fear. She grew up calling Margaret Aunt Maggie, never questioning why her aunt lived with us, why she was at every birthday and Christmas, why she knew exactly how Emma liked her pancakes. Children accept what they know is normal, and for Emma, having two mothers who loved her was simply how life worked, even if she didn't have the words for it. The close calls were terrifying. Once, Emma's teacher commented on how lucky she was to have two such devoted mothers. My blood ran cold until the teacher continued, "Your mother and her friend are wonderful role models of female friendship." I smiled and agreed, feeling Margaret's hand briefly brush mine in shared relief. We attended church sporadically, just enough to avoid suspicion. We endured sermons about traditional values that made us want to scream. We watched friends get married, have children, celebrate anniversaries publicly while we marked our own milestones in secret. Our 10th anniversary was champagne in the kitchen after Emma went to sleep. Our 20th was a weekend trip we disguised as a girls' getaway. The lies became second nature. When Emma asked why we didn't date, we said we were too busy. too focused on our careers and raising her. When neighbors got curious about our unusual arrangement, we emphasized our separate finances, separate social lives, anything to maintain the illusion of independence. Margaret's family never reconciled with her. My own parents, conservative and traditional, thought Margaret was a good influence, a stable, responsible woman helping me raise my daughter right. The irony was suffocating. They died never knowing that the woman they invited to every family dinner, who sent them birthday cards and Christmas presents, was the person I loved most in the world. The weight of hiding affected us differently. I became expert at compartmentalization, creating such separate worlds that sometimes I felt like two different people. Margaret grew quieter over the years, her vibrant spirit dimming under the constant vigilance. Some nights I'd find her in her studio, painting dark, turbulent canvases she'd never show anyone. "Do you ever regret this?" she asked me once, on our 25th anniversary. "Hiding, lying. I regret that we have to," I told her, "but I'll never regret loving you." Emma grew into a fierce, independent young woman. She went to college, built a career in environmental law, became everything we'd hoped for her. She dated openly, brought partners home for holidays, lived with a freedom we could only dream of, and she never suspected the truth about Margaret and me, or so we thought. It was Emma's 35th birthday when she asked the question that changed everything. We were in the kitchen, Margaret cooking, me setting the table, the same domestic dance we'd perfected over decades, when Emma said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" My hands froze on the silverware. There was something in her tone, careful and serious, that made my stomach drop. "Why have you and Maggie never dated anyone? In my entire life, neither of you has ever had a relationship." Margaret's back was to us, but I saw her shoulders tense. We'd prepared for this conversation theoretically, but theory meant nothing in the face of reality. "We've been focused on other things," I said, using our standard deflection. "Careers, raising you, our friendship, Mom." Emma's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm 35 years old. I'm not a child, and I need to know if I've been blind, or if you've both just been really good at hiding." The kitchen went silent, except for the ticking clock. Margaret turned off the stove and slowly turned around, meeting my eyes across the room. In that look, we had an entire conversation. Do we keep lying? Can we keep lying? After 40 years, don't we deserve the truth? "Sweetheart," I began, my voice shaking. "The thing is, you love each other," Emma said softly. "Not as friends, as partners. You always have, haven't you?" The relief was so overwhelming I had to sit down. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, and just like that, after 40 years of hiding, we were finally seen by the person who mattered most. Emma cried not from disappointment or anger, but from grief at what we'd endured, at the years we'd spent afraid of losing her love. "I wish you'd trusted me," she said. "I wish you'd known I would have loved you exactly the same." But here's the complicated truth. In 1983, when Emma was 3 years old, coming out could have meant losing custody. Our silence hadn't just been about fear, it had been about survival. And once you start hiding, stopping feels impossible. The lie becomes a habit, then a prison. That night, after Emma went home, Margaret and I sat in our bedroom, our actual, shared bedroom that we'd hidden from the world for 4 decades, and talked until sunrise, about regret and relief, about the cost of secrecy and the price of safety, about whether it was too late to live authentically. "I'm 63 years old," Margaret said. "I've spent 40 years pretending you're not the love of my life. I don't want to spend whatever time we have left still pretending." Neither did I. Emma's wedding invitation arrived 2 months later, elegant, cream-colored, traditional, and on the line for my +1. Emma had written in her own handwriting, "Please bring Margaret and Mom. You can introduce her however you want." It's time everyone knew the truth. My hands shook holding that invitation. The wedding would be large, family, friends, colleagues, everyone from our small town, where we'd hidden for 42 years. The thought of standing in front of all those people and claiming Margaret as mine was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. "We don't have to," Margaret said, though I could see the hope in her eyes. "We can keep things as they are. I won't be hurt, but she would be, and more importantly, I would be," because Emma's question had opened a door we couldn't close. Once you've tasted the possibility of freedom, hiding becomes unbearable. The weeks before the wedding were agonizing. We debated constantly. Should we tell people individually first? Just show up together and let people draw their own conclusions? Make an announcement? Every option felt impossibly hard. We started small. I called my sister, the most open-minded of my surviving relatives. My voice shook as I said, "There's something I need to tell you about Margaret and me." The silence that followed felt eternal. "Oh, honey," she finally said, "I've known for 20 years. I was just waiting for you to be ready to tell me." I laughed and cried simultaneously. Margaret, listening on speakerphone, did the same. Not everyone would be so understanding, we knew that, but having even one person's acceptance felt like permission to continue. We told our closest friends next, one by one. Most were surprised but supportive. A few weren't. Long-time friendships ended with uncomfortable phone calls and unreturned messages. Each rejection hurt, but each acceptance healed something we hadn't realized was broken. The day of Emma's wedding arrived. I put on my mother-of-a-bride dress, a beautiful sage green that Margaret had helped me choose, and she wore a stunning navy suit. We looked at each other in our bedroom, the same bedroom we'd shared for decades, and made a decision that had taken 42 years. "Ready?" Margaret asked, offering her hand. "Ready," I said, taking it. At the wedding, when people asked who Margaret was, I didn't say, "my friend," or "my roommate." I smiled, squeezed her hand, and said, "This is Margaret. She's my partner. We've been together for 42 years. Some people congratulated us. Some people walked away. Some people said nothing at all, processing information that contradicted decades of assumptions. But Emma beamed at us from across the room, and that made everything worthwhile. During the reception, Emma asked us to join her on the dance floor. As Frank Sinatra crooned, "The way you look tonight," my daughter held both our hands and said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "Thank you both for showing me what real love looks like, even when it was hard. Thank you for being my mothers." Mothers, plural, public, real. Margaret and I danced together for the first time in front of other people, and I felt 40 years of weight lift from my shoulders. I won't pretend it's been easy. We lost some friends, some family. Our church asked us to stop attending. Some former colleagues stopped returning our calls. The cost of visibility is real, and sometimes it hurts. But here's what we gained: ourselves, our truth, the ability to hold hands in public, to be acknowledged as what we've always been, a couple who has loved each other through decades of secrecy and fear. Margaret paints vibrant, joyful canvases now. I laugh more icily. We're planning a small ceremony to celebrate our 45th anniversary, and this time we're inviting people. Would I do it differently if I could go back? I don't know. The world we lived in made us choose between love and safety, between authenticity and survival. We did the best we could with the options we had. But if you're reading this and you're hiding, whether you're 50 or 70 or any age, please know that it's never too late to live your truth. The fear is real, but so is the freedom waiting on the other side. Your turn. Have you ever hidden an important part of yourself? What helped you finally embrace your truth? If you're still hiding, what would it take for you to step into the light? Share your story in the comments. This is a safe space for all of us learning to live authentically. And if this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone.